There are things that I was doing in my past that was destroying my marriage. I'm going to open up and be very vulnerable right now because I've seen a lot of women with very similar issues. And although your story may not be exactly like mine, the end result is the same. We are destroying our relationships, our marriages, and it comes from baggage, mental and emotional baggage and dysfunction from our past. As a disclaimer, I'm not saying that I've reached a place of perfection. My husband can tell you that. But the healing process has begun for me, and I have experienced growth, and my marriage is now able to thrive. And so I just want to share some of the transformation that's taken place in my personal life and how it's affected my marriage. I want to help someone else. So for me, I was easily angered. I had a short fuse if things didn't go my way. I would spout off at the mouth or email or text or whatever mode of communication I had access to. I was quick to leave the relationship or threaten to leave the relationship if things weren't going my way or if I felt, angry or threatened. I did not allow myself to be vulnerable. I would be very guarded, and I was jealous and had insecurities that I would mask behind like a fake facade of being like hard, a hard exterior, because I didn't want to be looked at as being weak. And so I'm talking to the Holy Spirit. I'm talking to God. I'm like, Lord, how did I get here? Why am I like this? And over time, the Spirit of God showed me. I mean, it's like he put my life before my eyes and showed me the roots of this dysfunction. Here's what he showed me back in my earliest childhood memories. I remember having issues of rejection and abandonment, like with my father, my biological father. He's now deceased, but he was not in my life as I was growing up. And as an adult, I can now look back and see that my father was in bondage. He needed deliverance. He needed a helper and he needed someone to come and be there for him. So he wasn't really in a position to be there for me and help me like I really wanted him to. But, as a child, I wasn't able to see that. As a child, all I could see was, there must be something wrong with me. What's wrong with me? Why doesn't he want me? And so I learned to put on this hard exterior. I learned to act like it didn't faze me. Why? Why did I act that way? Well, there's a number of reasons. And first, being biracial, growing up on the east side of Detroit, I always felt like I had to prove myself. There were people who wanted to try me because I looked weak and I looked like, I'm this little, light skinned girl with long ponytail braids. And also just the people that I hung around, my friends, my family, just growing up, we would talk about each other for fun. It was a sport to talk about people, your hair, your clothes, your mama, your daddy, your bald headed granny, something. We're going to talk about you. And so everybody had to, take it. You had to have thick skin because we were going to talk about you and everybody was going to laugh. And if you dare showed any weakness, if you dare showed that you didn't like being talked about or that you didn't want to take part in it, you would get talked about even more, and you would be you'd be laughed at like, okay, you little punk, you are weak, what, you can't take a joke. So it was just this culture, this subculture that I grew up in. To survive, you just had to have this really strong exterior. Also, another factor that contributed to this is that, I was raised by a single mother, very strong, independent woman. So I saw her, about her business, working full time, taking care of 4 children on her own, so I learned to be very independent and strong as well as a woman. And then also, our whole world, our culture, feminism is on the rise. I mean, it is strong. And so I've been indoctrinated as well. And Feminism, I'm just going to say it causes women to be more masculine. It really does. It strips women of their femininity. And what I mean by that is, feminism preaches, I am woman, hear me roar. I don't need a man. I can do anything a man can do. This is all about equality. I'm just as strong, just as whatever as a man. Give me a tool belt and a wrench and a hammer. I can do it too. I'm not going to take any mess. I'm not going to, be beat up. I have rights and I'm going to stand for them and no one is going to take that away from me. And I get it. I totally get it because women have been beat, raped, abandoned, mistreated, misused. I mean, treated like less than human by men over the years. And so any people group who has been victimized in such a way, they're going to band together and say, at some point, we're not taking this anymore. We have rights and we're going to stand for them. And you're not going to continue to walk all over us. Right. So I get why feminism was birthed. But the Bible says that a woman should have a gentle and a quiet spirit. 1 Peter 3:4 reads, you should clothe yourselves instead with the beauty that comes from within, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is precious, so precious to God. This is telling us what God considers beautiful and precious in his sight in terms of, what characteristics he wants to see in his daughters. And so a woman who is loud and aggressive and you can't tell her nothing and she's popping off at the mouth every other minute and strong-willed and ready to fight, that's not a gentle and quiet spirit. That is an aggressive, combative, contentious spirit is what it is. It interferes with relationships. Not only male female relationships, marriage and things like that, but relationships of all types. For me, I started seeing that this mentality, it affected my relationship, starting with my father to my other family members, my friends, my dating relationships, and eventually with my husband in my marriage. I learned to put on this hard exterior. It was as a defense mechanism. It was my way of protecting my heart so that nobody could hurt it, could crush it, So I had the attitude that, like, I'm not about to be nobody's fool. You're not finna pull the wool over my eyes. I will leave this relationship before I let you hurt me. I felt like, if I was more into a relationship, more invested or emotionally into a relationship than the other person was, I would just withdraw and I would put up a wall so that they wouldn't hurt me. I would feel like, well, no, I'm not giving myself then if you're not going to be giving yourself, and I would pull back. And I used to pride myself on being able to walk away from a relationship if I felt like somebody hurt me or if I felt rejected. And you can't, a relationship can't be sustained in that way. You have to be willing to talk about things and work through things and, get to the bottom of it and not always just clam up, And so for me, this is how it manifested in my life. So I would withdraw, I would shut down if someone, hurt me. And that, again, that's a masculine trait. Men typically are the ones they shut down and they don't want to talk. And I had become like that. And I was very, passive aggressive. I see now that mindset is what destroyed these many relationships in my life, very important relationships, in my life. I remember I had a best friend throughout my middle school years. And eventually our relationship came to an end. And from the way that I remember it, there were two main reasons that our relationship broke down. It was my fault. First, we were tight. This was my girl. I loved her. We did everything together every day. We ate lunch together, shared each other's, shared secrets and told, who we had a crush on. And this was my girl, my ace. And so it was just me and her all the time. We was like these, and she started hanging around another girl and her little clique, and I felt threatened. I felt jealousy. I felt like, she's hanging out with these other girls. What about me? And she hadn't like totally like dissed me. She still was my friend and a good friend at that. But it was my insecurities. I felt like, okay, is she gonna want to be friends with them, and then and not with me, or start spending more time with them? So I felt threatened, and so what I did was, instead of talking to her and just being a good friend and supporting her and just getting over my little issues, I didn't. I started pulling back with my emotions, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, what about us? Okay, whatever. So I'm not gonna put my heart out there to get hurt. Fine, whatever. You don't want to be my friend? Okay, be friends with the other. Like that was kind of my attitude. But we still were friends. Then the second thing, which is what ended, I think, our relationship, is, again, as I remember it, we were going into high school, and her mother lived in one city and her father lived in another city, and she had a choice which school district she would go to. So I'm hoping she would pick the school that I go to, and she picks the other school. So I'm very, hurt. I'm jealous, insecure, thinking, okay, well, she's going to just make all new friends and totally forget about me. And then you got to remember too, we were young. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a driver's license. So, I would see her every day at school, in middle school. So in high school, it's like, I'm never going to see her. I don't have a car to get to her. We live far away. We weren't within walking distance or anything like that. So I felt like this is the end of our, friendship, and I couldn't see past it. And so I was hurt. And instead of talking to her and telling her how I felt, and, let's hash this out, where she could have reassured me in my insecurities, she could have reassured me, girl, you tripping. I love you. We still gonna be cool. And we could have still been cool to this day, really good friends, and we're not. What I did was I pulled away in my emotions, and she still called and tried to, keep the friendship going. But, it's like, I don't see you. You're at school. You have a whole different life. And so I just purposely moved on and tried to find a new best friend and tried to find, a life without her, and purposely just shut down my emotions out of my dysfunctional way of thinking. Instead of being happy for her, I should have been happy that she's starting a new chapter in her life and that she's got new friends. And I should have supported that and been there for her. It was all about me, and feeling like I might be abandoned, or I might be, rejected by her. I'd be overly suspicious of my husband and distrust him. I would overreact over the tiniest little thing, I'll give you an example. Just a couple of days ago. So he must be declining my call and sending me the voicemail. And if that's the case, where you at, what you doing, who you with, and why you can't answer my calls? You ain't calling me back. You ain't texting me back. Nothing.